Alrighty. It's the wee hours of Friday morning, and it's time for the final episode of Building Out. We're closing out the playlist. It's not going to be 3 separate shows anymore. We're packing it up and packing it in. Pack it up, pack it in, let me begin, cut under the chin, fresh out the loony bin. You don't want me to act up, punk better back up, swinging my axe, everybody gets hacked up. Hey, yeah, you can't say pack it up, pack it in, and not have me do the intro verse to jump around. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's a compulsion. I gotta do it. I gotta do it. I got it. I don't have a choice, okay? I don't have a choice. Anyway, I just got one of the 3 things that is constantly advertised on YouTube. And those 3 things, as we all know, are, first of all, Clip Studio Paint, which I already have, GoDaddy and their Arrow bullshit that I don't use, but I've been a GoDaddy customer for like 20 years. I'm not leaving over that. I mean, come on. It's a separate service. I don't pay for it. I don't use it. I don't care. And the third thing is the TourBox Elite. They spell it weird. I'm kidding. It's the TourBox. You see the TourBox advertised all the time. Everybody I've seen review one of these says it's surprising how heavy this is. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's good quality and it's substantial. No, it's surprising how heavy this is. It really, this is solid. It's substantial. Now, I have the Elite, which is wireless, but I don't like wireless. I want to use it with a wire. And the cable that you get with it is really an excellent cable. I should point out, you don't get the cable with it. You have to buy the cable separately. It does, however, come with batteries. If you're going to use it wirelessly, it does have batteries. Anyway, we need to talk about the marketing of the TourBox and the realistic options with the TourBox. So, first of all, let's go over kind of the history. Let's kind of place the TourBox within the perspective of things I have used to improve my workflow in Clip Studio Paint. First of all, we have the old tablet that I used to use. That's this tablet right here. You can see you can see down here at the bottom, we have down here at the bottom, we have the Newmark DJ console. That is sitting right here. Right there. And this had 2 banks of 10 buttons and a dial. Now, a dial is fundamentally 2 buttons that you're expected to press repeatedly. Okay? There's 1 button when you turn it clockwise, and there's 1 button when you turn it Widdershins. And that's all there is to it. So this is basically, you can consider that 2 buttons. A dial can be replaced by 2 buttons, and 2 buttons can be replaced by an additional dial. Okay? That's just the fundamental way that stuff like this works. So, I moved on from this, and I got a Huion tablet, which is the tablet that I use now. Well, why did I get a Huion tablet? I had this perfectly good XP pen. Huion's 4K. That's nice. Also, I didn't get this. It was a gift. So it is what it is. And it came with this key dial. And the key dial has 18 keys. Okay, it's got these 3 rows of 4. That's 12. And then it's got 2. Then it's got a row of 4 more. And then it's got another 4 buttons there. Wait a minute, I already counted that row of 12. So then there's 4 more here, And then there's one here and one here for a total of, there's two more, 12 plus 4 plus 2, 18 buttons on the keypad. And then we had this dial. The button in the middle selects 3 different states for the dial. So there's 3 different things you can do with the dial, and each of those can be replaced by 2 buttons, and it replaces 2 button presses. So what you actually end up with is you end up with the same 24 commands that I had on my old tablet. So I just remapped everything that I already had onto this. Now I did do a lot of changes to what commands were mapped and where they were mapped and all that sort of thing. There's a constant evolution. Now let's come over to the TourBox. And you look at the TourBox and you go, oh man, number one, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 buttons. Plus there's a button under the scroll wheel, a button under the knob, and a button under the disc. That's 14 buttons. You've got 14 buttons. And you've got right here, okay? You've got this, that's got 1 command going up, 1 command going down. That's 2 more. And then you've got this right here. That's 2 more. And this goes in 2 directions. That's 2 more. And that right there, that is 20 functions. That is 20 functions. That's not as many as I had with either of my old things. But. That 20 is just the beginning, because what have they told you in all of the marketing materials? They've said, you can double-click the buttons. Well, okay then. So if I can double-click the buttons, then I've got 14 buttons and 3 dials. There's no way to double-click a dial, okay? So that's like 6. But if I can double-click the buttons, that's 28 right there. That's 28 just by double-clicking the buttons. Oh, not so fast, bucko. Not so fast, because you can only double-click these 4 buttons. These are the only buttons you can double-click. None of the other buttons will let you double-click them. Well, okay, that's still 24. That's still 24. That gives me all of the things that I want, okay? That gives me all of the things that I need. Already, the TourBox equals everything that I want to use. And then they tell you, you can press more than 1 button at a time. Really? Cool. I can press more than 1 button at a time, then I've got 14 buttons. And if I got 14 buttons, I can press any of those buttons, and then I can press any of 13 other buttons. Well, that's 182 different combinations just by clicking 2 buttons. And then I could press 3 buttons. I could press 3 buttons. If I press 3 buttons, that's 12 more buttons that I could press after pressing these 182. That's 2,184 combinations just with 3 buttons. And what if I press 4? Not so fast, bucko. Not so fast. Number 1, you can only press 2 buttons at a time, okay? You can only press 2 buttons at a time, and one of them has to be one of these 4. Are you starting to feel a little remorse yet? Because now what you have is you've got these 4 buttons can be used in combination with any of the other buttons, right? Not so fast. Because the button under the scroll wheel, the button under the knob, the button under the dial, and this button next to the knob that they call the Tour button. These 4 buttons cannot be used in a combo. They always do the same thing. They're only a single press, never a double press. They always do the same thing. On top of that, you know how they tell you, you can change what the knob does with these with these keys? You can change what the scroll wheel does with these keys? Not the disc. The disc never changes. This cannot be used in a combo at all, ever. This cannot be used in a combo at all, ever. To make matters worse, these two buttons can only be used in combos with these two buttons. And the D-pad can only be used in combos with these two buttons. So they've chopped your available combo options in half for these two sets of buttons. Why? Because fuck you, that's why. Now, on top of that, we're going to go through and we're going to talk about exactly how. Actually, let's go through and talk about how many options this is right now, okay? Now, each of these 4 buttons actually has 5 different functions. You have a single click, you have a double click, and you have a combination with any of the other 3 buttons. So right there, you've got, back up a little here, you've got 5 different options. Single click, double click, combo with the top button, combo with the tall button, combo with the short button. That's your 5 options with that button, okay? And similarly, you've got 5 options with this button, 5 options with this button, 5 options with this button. That's 20 different options. Actually, let's back this up. We'll put a 20 right here. Now, as I've already said, every rotary command is really just 2 buttons. So we can call each of these 2 buttons in its rotary function. Now, this one only has 2, but both of these, the scroll and the knob, can be used with all of the 4 shift buttons, or what they call the prime buttons. So these actually have 5 different pairs of options. So that's another 22 options, okay? Then you've got the buttons underneath of them. You've got the button underneath this one, that's 1. The button under that one, that's 1. The tour button, that's 1. And the button under the disc, that's 1. And we've got 2 plus 22. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 4. And now we move on to the difficult ones. The D-pad. The D-pad can be single-clicked, not double-clicked, and it can be used in combination with the top button or the side button. Nothing else. You cannot combo the D-pad with any of the other buttons. It has to be comboed with one of these 2 buttons and not one of these 2 buttons. Why not one of those 2 buttons? Because fuck you. There's no good reason. But that gives you 12 more button options. And that leaves us with this section here. These 2 buttons, what they call C1 and C2, they can be single-clicked, but not double-clicked. They cannot be used in combination. You can use the tall and short buttons in combination with each of them. That gives you 3 options with that button, 3 options with that button, and that's a total of 6. So that's 20 plus 22, that's 42. And then we've got 4, 12, and 6. So we've got 12 and 6 is 18, and we've got the 4, okay? Now we add the 18 and the 4, we get 22, and we add that to our 42, we get a total of 64 possible combinations on the device. You can only map 64 commands onto this device. That is the maximum. That is the most you can do is 64. Now, you can fuck around and do some interesting shit. Like you'll notice over here, I have got the tall button mapped to control. And because I have the tall button mapped to control, even though I am not allowed to combo the tall button with the D-pad, I've got the right button mapped to N. So if I press the tall button and right on the D-pad, it does in fact give me Control N for a new file. In fact, if I press Control and Shift on my keyboard and then N, it creates a new vector layer over here on the side. Over here on my layer panel right there, I've got a new layer. You can use this in combination with your keyboard, but if I press the tall and short buttons together, you see right here, I've got the tall map to control, I've got the short map to alt. If I press them together, you would expect me to get control and alt. I don't. What I get is whatever I've mapped that combo to. There is a tall plus short combo that has to be mapped. But I've mapped it to Control plus Alt, because that's the only way to get Control plus Alt out of this. But when I press Control and Alt together on here, when I press them together, and then I press the N on the D-pad, when I press right on the D-pad for an N, nothing happens. You can't press 3 buttons at once. 3 buttons at once doesn't work. And I want to be clear about this. If you've never worked in hardware design, you don't understand this, but there's a maximum simultaneous presses of buttons, okay? That's hardware. That's in the hardware. The hardware will not recognize every possible combination of buttons. It's part of the hardware design. That's natural, that's normal. There are limitations to that, and a lot of people don't understand the limitations. I'm not shitting on the company for only allowing 2 buttons to be pressed, okay? If I could press the Control and Alt together and then press the N and then get what that's mapped to, which is, if I use my keyboard, I can do the Control Alt and then I can press N on my keyboard and I get the macro that creates all of my individual layers on my new image, okay? It's a hardware limitation. If it was a software limitation, I could press the Control and Alt, and then I could press the N, and it would work. It would just be something that I couldn't map in the software. I would have to map it through. Clever misdirection, which is what I've done to get the Control N in the first place. You're not supposed to be able to use the tall button in combination with the D-pad, but by judicious and clever selection of what these controls do, I have allowed myself to have that. But that is you doing the work and not the TourBox doing the work. You can do that. In fact, you're going to have to do a lot of that, which is why that 64 commands, we're going to be talking a little bit about that. You don't actually get all the 64 commands. And one of the reasons is this. The scroll wheel has a button under it. Just like the knob has a button under it, just like the disc has a button under it. And if I press that button, if I press the button on the knob, here, then it changes my foreground and background colors. You can see that over in the palette area. Like if I wave my cursor around in that area, right over here, you can see that when I press the knob, it changes the foreground and background color. Now, similarly, if I press on the disc, and you can probably hear this. No, you can't. You can't hear it on the microphone. But it's a fairly stiff click. It's the same thing with the dial, which I've mapped to flip my canvas horizontally, because I don't do that as often as I should. Similarly, I don't rotate my canvas as often as I should. Okay? I should rotate my canvas more frequently. I should flip my canvas more frequently. That will make me a better artist, and that's something I need to get in the habit of. Now then we have, of course, the scroll wheel, which is the zoom, okay? And when I scroll to zoom, the button underneath of the scroll wheel is very, very sensitive. And because it's very, very sensitive, every time I scroll, I press it by mistake. So I can't map it to anything. There's nothing I can map it to. If I map it to anything at all, I'm going to be clicking it all the time, every time I use the scroll wheel. So I've got it unmapped. That removes one of the possible commands I can have on the device. Similarly, I've got over here on the side button, I've got, let me check something real quick. Okay, yeah, so the side button, okay, the side button resets my canvas. So if I click the side button, it resets the canvas, and then I have to zoom back in again. Okay, so I got to zoom back in. Okay, there we go. Button under the scroll wheel is not mapped, so I can't accidentally do whatever's mapped to it. But that's what my side button does. Now, the double click on the side button is mapped to this HUD that tells me what everything does. And you can see the problem already. Namely that when I do the double click, I get the single click action every time. That's the problem with double clicks. Now, this is a standard user experience issue. It's a standard thing that people run into all the time, that when you're doing a double click, you're actually doing a single click followed by a click that registers as a double click. And you have to be in charge of making sure that your double clicks and your single clicks are compatible. For example, I've got double clicking on the top button mapped to deleting everything on the layer. But I've also got the top button itself mapped to this menu. This is why they're not lying when they say you can map hundreds of commands onto the system. They say you can map hundreds of commands because you can. You can map hundreds of commands. And you can map hundreds of commands because every single one of those 64 commands I just showed you can have one of these menus, and it can have at least 2 commands on it. And that's 128. And if you put 3, that's 192, and so on and so forth. And you can have thousands of commands mapped. They're not lying in the marketing materials. They're just being misleading. And I want to be clear. I want to be very clear about this. This device is great. It's a wonderful device. It does what they say it does. They're just a little iffy about it, and they don't let you in on all the technical details. And the technical details are significant and substantial. So, because of that single-click, double-click thing, you're only going to have so many things that you can do with combinations and single clicks and double clicks. You're going to have to unmap certain functions because they just don't apply to you very well, and you're going to have to try and finagle your way around certain issues. But you can do it. You can work your way around this, and you can get a lot more functionality out of the device. There's just a lot of work involved in it. Now, I, for one, am very, very upset that I cannot map the disk to other things, because my notion in my head was that I was going to push this tall button, and when I pushed that tall button, then when I scrolled, damn it, it's not doing anything. Oh, that's because I changed what it's mapped to. Oh, anyway, I'm going to change that later. But the idea was that when I pressed one of the shift buttons, I would be able to use the scroll wheel to control density. and the knob to control opacity, and the disc to control how hard the brush was. But instead, I had to map hardness to another option. So now, instead of pressing one button and being able to modify the density, opacity, and hardness, I need to push one button for the density and opacity and a second button for the hardness. And I don't like that. That's not what I wanted to do. That doesn't allow me to organize things the way that I want them organized. And it's upsetting. But TourBox never says you can modify the dial with shift keys. It never says you can do combos with the dial. I made up in my head that because you can do that with the knob, and because you can do that with the scroll, well, you must be able to do it with the dial. Why wouldn't you be able to do it with the dial? Because fuck you. That's why. There's no good reason for it. They just don't let you. Well, there is a good reason. There's probably a hardware reason for it. It's hardware design gets to be messy, and a lot of people don't understand this. It's like this scroll wheel that they install in the device has a value. It costs something to get that scroll wheel to put in the device, and this scroll wheel component might cost something like 15 cents in quantity. Okay, and they might go, this button is a little bit squirrely. We'd like a stiffer button on that, the same way that we have with the knob and the disc. And then when they say, how much would that cost? How much more would it cost to put a stiffer button on this? They go, well, it's going to cost 87 cents instead of 15. 87? Well, yeah, and on top of that, that's just the assembly. The switch itself is going to cost an additional 19 cents. That's over $1. We're going from 15 cents to over $1. That's 7 times the price. Like, what? Why does that happen? Oh, and also there's a $12 million upfront cost. $12 million upfront and over $1 per part? From 15 cents we went up to that? Well, yeah, because the part we're currently using is used in thousands of products. And those thousands of products are using millions of those parts. So we can get them cheap because they're already manufacturing millions of them every year. So that's easy. We can get these really, really cheap because they're already made. But there's a machine that puts the switch in the scroll wheel. And that machine that puts the switch in the scroll wheel only works with specific dimensions of switch. If you want a stiffer switch, that switch is going to have different dimensions. And because it has different dimensions, we're going to need to do the tool and die work to put that switch in, to use that switch in the machine that inserts it into the scroll wheel. Okay? Well, nobody's making that. So because nobody's making that, we lose the economies of scale. And on top of that, the device with those dimensions, okay, we're going to have to order that switch from a different supplier. Now, our existing manufacturer already has millions upon millions of this switch that we're using, but they're going to have to get brand new switches over there. So that's the only place that makes them, and we're going to have to get them over here. And on top of that, we can't very well have them replace the entire production line with the thing we're building. So they're going to need a new machine and a new assembly line station and new people to work on it, and they're going to need to retool, and there's going to need to be installation, and there's going to need to be maintenance, and they're going to need to duplicate a certain amount of work, and there's an opportunity cost, and there's square footage, and there's safety regulations, and there's all kinds of licensing and permits. And you put all of that together, and it costs millions of dollars to change one switch inside of the scroll wheel. It seems like such a tiny little change, but when you get manufacturing involved, you find out it's not a little change. It's a complete reorganization of the factory. It's a complete rebuild of the assembly line, and it's going to cost millions of dollars. Do I want a stiffer switch in the scroll wheel? Yeah. Do I want to pay $12 million and 7 times as much for each part to get it? No. Understanding this stuff and making these decisions, that is what project managers and CEOs do all the time. Most people don't understand the logistics of it. They don't understand. It's just like the whole you can only press 2 buttons at once thing. That's a limitation of the embedded controller that is built into this device. And in order to change that, they would need to alter one of the physical chips in the device. And then you would only have the new capability in new devices, not in the old ones. And you have to factor in, not only are you saying, if you want this new feature, you have to buy a new device, but how mad are your existing customers going to be that they have to buy a new device for this feature they want? How likely are they to understand why they have to buy a new device? Well, it's fairly unlikely. And they're going to go, you can update the firmware. Why don't you just update the firmware? That part's not firmware. I mean, technically it is, but it's not an EEPROM. It's an EEPROM, okay? And you write it once, and you're done. It's a write once situation. You can't update that bit. It's in the hardware. If you don't design hardware, if you don't build microcontrollers, you don't know this. If you do it exclusively with the Raspberry Pi, you don't know this. You're using a general purpose controller. In the real world, where they make real devices, they use dedicated, specific purpose microcontrollers. And a lot of the time, they just they don't have the capabilities that you wish they had. So another thing with this is that whole activating when you double click. I have the top button. The double click is mapped to delete everything on the layer. So I go one click, it brings up this menu. One click, it puts the menu away. Double click, it deletes, but it also brings up the menu. Then I have to put the menu away. So if I delete, I have the menu. And you're going to have to account for that. On top of that, if you're using this in combination with another item, like the top button plus the knob scrolls through the tools over here. You see that these things over here. The top button plus the knob, the top button plus the knob scrolls through the tools, so I can pick the tool that I want. Isn't that nice? I think that's nice. That's really nice. The only problem is that I've got this menu. And if my cursor happens to be up here by the tools, that menu comes up over top of the tools, and I can't see what I'm doing. So there are drawbacks, there are issues, and a lot of these are user experience things that you, the user, are going to have to design for yourself. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no way around that, okay? But they don't tell you about a lot of this stuff, and what it ends up being is, because of the ergonomics, you do not have a free choice of which actions get mapped. A lot of stuff is just never going to get mapped because it's problematic for you. I can't use the button under the scroll wheel because that button is just too easy for me to click. Every time I go to scroll, I click it. And that's not good. There's also a very specific way they expect you to use the device. And that way is they expect you to use your left hand, and they expect you to take the knob in between your thumb and forefinger. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. Hello. There we go. So what they kind of expect you to do, okay, is to take the knob in between your thumb and forefinger, and then you've got your fingers up here. You got fingers up here by the top button. You got a finger over here by the side button, okay? And all of that is easy. And you've got your middle finger right here on the scroll wheel where it belongs, just like if you were using a mouse. And that actually works really well, and that works fantastically. And if you're going to use the scroll buttons, you're going to press the D-pad with your thumb, okay? And you're going to use the dial with your thumb. And these buttons over here, okay, you're just going to reach over and press those with your forefinger. And they have this idea of how you're going to use the device. Well, I'm left-handed. I don't use the device like that. I use the device like this. I have my little finger on the short button and my ring finger on the tall button and my middle finger on the knob and my forefinger on the scroll wheel. That just automatically happens. That just, my hand fits there just really, really well. And it works really nicely. There's only one problem. And that problem is that while the disc fits very well with my thumb, I can't shift control the disc. If I could use both of these as shift buttons for the disc, then I would have all kinds of stuff just right at my fingertips. It'd be so easy. And I could shift my thumb over to the D-pad. This would work really, really well for me. But these two buttons don't work with the D-pad. You can't do that. They don't let you do it. Why? Because fuck you. And that would dramatically change things for left-handed users. It would make a huge difference because that's the natural way that it fits into your left hand. Now, I know there are people that are using it a little bit differently. Like the official recommendation is turn it upside down and use it the same way that we expect you to. And then you've got this under your thumb and this under your forefinger. This is still under your ring finger, and you've still got your middle finger for the scroll wheel and for the dial, and everything fits. Everything fits and everything works. But some people are using it turned on its side like this, and that works well for them. Let me try and get the light on it in a way that you can actually see it. Using it on its side like this works for a lot of people. TourBox themselves recommend that you turn it upside down completely like this for left-handed use, or for use in the right hand anyway, because they expect you to hold it like this and use the wheel with your thumb and forefinger. I just want to use the wheel. I just want to have my finger on the wheel and turn it with friction. I want to turn it from the side like this, kind of orbit around it, and they don't really take that into account. If they could just make all of the shift keys worked with the D-pad, that would go a long way. And if they could make the top and side shift keys work with the C1 and C2 buttons, that would go a long way. That would make like a significant difference. Because just right there, you get an additional 12 shortcuts. That's 12 more, that's 76 that you can map on there. And why can't I shift the disc? Okay, I don't understand why I can't use combos on the disc. I'd really like to be able to do that. That's another 8. It's another 8 things that you could do. So we'd go up to 86 things, 84 things. But yeah, the The lack of double clicks is also weird. Like, why can't I double click everything? If I could double click everything, that'd be another 10. And you'd start getting close to that 100. You would start getting close to that 100 if you could double click everything. But some of that's software, some of that's hardware. I don't know how much of it is software and how much of it is hardware. I know the number of keys you can press on the device is hardware because I've messed around with it and I've looked at how the device responds. That is definitely a hardware situation. But I don't want anybody to lose sight of the fact that fundamentally the TourBox is a great peripheral. It does a lot of really good stuff. It's just not quite what it holds itself up to look like. They never straight up lie to you in any of the advertising. They never say the device can do something that it can't do. But they really just kind of steer away from all the things that it can't do. And I don't know. I felt like somebody should make a video talking about that. Somebody should talk about that and say, these are some of the limitations of it. These are kind of the issues that I've had with it. There's a guy who says, I've had 0 issues with the TourBox. Wow, you must not be very bright. You must not be doing too much. You're probably just loading the preset and using that. And honestly, that would be a good idea. When you get a peripheral like this, you really ought to take the preset they give you and load that and go, I'm going to use this for about a week and just see how I feel about it. And you try to get used to that. After a week or so, then you go in and customize. But I am what they call a power user, and I'm also stupid and make bad decisions. So I'm going in and changing everything and modifying everything right from the very beginning, because that's the kind of person I am. Some that is at least peripherally related to design and development. There's been some human factors engineering there, and there's been some user experience stuff, and there's been some hardware design, and really this is related to how you set up anything ever. And one of the big things that I'm concerned with is what is convenient and easy for me as I'm using the device. Like this button over here on the side. This is hard for me to press. There's no easy way for me to push this as I'm using the device. But that's a benefit, because there are certain commands that I never, ever, ever want to hit by mistake. And this button is a really good place to put those. So I've got 5 options there. I can take 5 things that I want to do frequently, but I never want to do them by mistake. And I can just map them onto that button. That's exactly the right place to put them. That's where they belong. But more importantly, there's no law that says I have to unplug my key dial K20. I can use them both, which means I don't just have the 64 functions available in the TourBox. I have the 24 functions available on my key dial. That's 88. That's a lot. So you won't catch me complaining about this. Now it'd be nicer if I could add that tablet over there, but I'd have to give up the 4K, and it's smaller. This is a 22. This is a 24. I'm going to stick with the 24-inch 4K. I mean, call me crazy. Call me crazy. I'm going to stick with the bigger one. I like the big. I'm a size queen. So yeah, I'm going to stick with that. But I do really like using the TourBox. It's nice. It fits well in my hand. I'm gonna have to really kind of mess around with it a little bit and see how I feel specifically about it. But the way that my hand rests on it really works very well for. I mean, kind of the way that I use it is really. I sort of lay my hand, because my camera's a piece of shit. I kind of lay my hand over it like this. And you can't see any of the stuff that's going on under there. Okay, but I put my hand on it like this, and I've got my forefinger on the scroll wheel. I've got my middle finger on the top button here, but I've got the middle of my middle finger on the dial, and I can easily lift the tip of my finger and rotate the dial. So that's fairly easy. If I want to hold down the top button and rotate the dial, then I need to bring my thumb in. But I can move my thumb over to the D-pad or to the tour button, and over here I've got my ring finger is right on the C1 and C2 buttons right there, and I've also got the macro area is right next to it. So it's easy for me to use my little finger to press one of those buttons while I press one of those buttons. And also, if I need to press this button for anything else, I can hold it down with the back of my ring finger, like so. A lot of people don't work that way, and they sit there and they go, what do you mean you use your fingertip for one button and the rest of your finger for a different one? How does that work? I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, it's just... it's just the way that I think. Every part of my finger can be pushing and working on a different thing. You know, that's how fingers work. But all told, I think it works well for the left hand. I think it would work better for the left hand if I could use the tall and short buttons as shift buttons. I think that would be nice. If they worked with the D-pad, that would be nice. It would be much better for me as a left-handed person instead of trying to press the top and side buttons while using my ring finger to access it. It's really awkward to use those two buttons as shift buttons with my right hand. So that would be my complaint. I would like those two buttons to be added to the D-pad shift, and I would also like the other two buttons to be added as shift for C1 and C2. I don't see a good reason for that. I don't think it's hardware related, but I understand that the two buttons at a time, that's almost certainly hardware related. And double clicks on the buttons under the dials, that should be pure software. Double clicks are almost always software. So I don't see why those aren't allowed. I don't see why you can't double click on the D-pad. I would like that. That would be nice. Man, that would create some weirdness, because if you could shift that 4 different ways and double click, ooh, now you got like 80 commands just on the D-pad. That's ridiculous. Maybe that's too much. Maybe that's too much for the average person to deal with, and they can't handle it. So you know, you don't want to do the double click on the D-pad. I would understand that. It's just too confusing for the average person. Don't even give them the option. Anyway, Do the little YouTube dance, like, comment, subscribe, all that happy horse shit. And, okay, bye.